So if I understand the question correctly, I feel like the data we're given is not even related to the question. So the question is asking, um, what's the availability of the team? Um, we know the percentage of their availability. We don't know what a work week is for them. The only number we have is that the total number of hours they spent during doing meetings was 8 hours. So like it's just a bunch of information that's not really relevant to calculate what the total capacity of the team is.
All right. So what do you need to calculate capacity? What exactly you need?
We would need to know what a work week is for them. So we know it's 5 days, but how much they work each day, we don't really know.
It's written. The team consists of 3 members. So normal week per day work is 8 hours, right? Lela?
I'm talking to myself. Okay, so they're talking about 5 days working days, right? And 8 hours a day. So that would be 5 times 8. But I don't understand, their availability, team availability, 3 team members with the percentage. So I really don't know how would you calculate that.
Okay. Madan?
Yes, what I did is it's my personal approach. Like, so each person 8 hours, 5 days, it's a 40 hours. So if you take this 3%, it's 120 hours. So I did a rough estimation. I didn't use the calculator. So when it goes to the first person, it's like 75%. I thought of putting it 30 hours. And second person of 65 hours, it's like I just put it as 25. And another person is like 30%, it is like Muhammad is 30%, it's like 15 hours or something like I put it. So it roughly I came to 70. So when I saw the answer, I declared 72.8 with maybe the value may be different, but I did this approach.
Okay, that's right. So remember when you see such question in the exam, so PMI, I told you in the course when we talked about resource smoothing and resource leveling. So normal working hours are 8 hours, and PMI does not endorse overworking or extra hours, right? So assume there are 8 hours in a day. So let's see the answer how capacity could be calculated. We did some examples during the course as well when I calculated the capacity, if you recall, ideal capacity and real capacity, right?
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
so let's see how it is calculated. Once you understand, please explain.
I still don't understand this. I understand the first part and the second sentences, but where are they getting the 20 hours and 24 hours, that I don't understand.
Actually, can I say?
Yes, Shankar, go ahead.
Yes, actually, from the 40 hours, they subtracted the 8. So it will become 32 hours. So 32 is like 100% now. From that 32 hours, like they have given the percentage of availability. So the first person is like available 24%. That is
75%.
like 75% of 32. And then the second person, based on the availability in 32 hours, say they are available 20.8 hours. And then the third person is available for 9.6 hours in 32 hours. So they added up all the three and they got 54.4.
Yeah, Ammar, you are right. Like this is very clear because I did that calculation. I have an answering the answer, but I didn't minus that 8-hour meeting for each day, 1 hour meeting or something like that. But this is correct, actually. What you are mentioning is correct. Like,
all right. So we talked about
basically,
we talked about concept of real capacity. So real team capacity is when you exclude time that team spends in meetings, right?
yes.
So 40 hour is the total time that is available.
Mhm.
And out of 40 hours, 8 hours in a week, team members spend in different types of meetings. So actual working hours for a single team member is 32 hours. But
Yes.
then team availability is Kevin is available
Yes.
75% of the total capacity. Ekta is available for 65% and Muhammad is 32%. If you do 75% into 32, so you will be getting 24, right? So answer here is 24. If you add 65% of 32, this is 20.8. And if you get 30% of 32, this will be 9.6. So total answer is 50.4 hours. So this is the how capacity is actually calculated.
Yes.
So most of the time we have the concept of capacity, but in actual we don't know how teams calculate capacity. So this is one of the methods they use to calculate capacity. Another method we discussed in the class as well, where they multiply ideal capacity with an efficiency factor. Remember, we talked about that. So if let's suppose ideal capacity is 100 hours, so efficiency factor is let's suppose 0.8, so they will multiply with 0.8 and get the real capacity that is 80 hours. You understand? Anyone who couldn't understand?
Yeah. I understand this question. Like, so in general, like if they didn't mention anything, we have to take it for a week long is like 8 hour minus in all the hours.
Yes,
Is that
absolutely.
correct?
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah, because I calculated for 40 hours. So based on the percentage, so that may be the error. Yeah.
All right.
Understood. Yep.
And it is written, if you could see, a week-long iteration. If I go up, so it mentions like, yes, the time for meeting is mentioned, their availability is mentioned. The only thing
Oh, yeah.
which is not mentioned is okay, it is 40 hours or not. So if you multiply 8 hours with 5, it is 40 hours.
Yeah, I forgot to see that 8 hours, Amar. Sorry for that, actually. I
All right.
didn't.
Next question, please. All right, so I can see C, D, and B. Okay, so Sao, why you have chosen option C?
I hope you can hear me. Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
It's probably the team is highlighting these things and stand up. That's why I choose C. We don't really have to wait till retrospective or team demo. As the team are bringing these item up or bottleneck up and stand ups, that needs to be taken into consideration and try to find solution around the impediment. That's why I choose C.
Okay. Amandeep, why you have chosen option C?
Well, in the question, it says that we have noticed some delays in completing the task, and team is doing efficient work, but they're also bringing the concerns that it's because of the external factors. So C seemed to be right because in the daily stand-up meetings, like carefully review the impediments and challenges highlighted in daily stand-up meetings, analyzing it and how external factors are being mentioned and impacting task duration. So in stand-up meetings, whatever the challenges, issues are highlighted. So by analyzing them, we can figure out which factors externally affecting the project's completion date.
All right. Shankar?
Yes. They mentioned like there is a bottleneck situation and there is a delay in completing the task. So it's, but they also find that the internal operations are like efficient. So I mean, the things which are we discuss in the stand-up meetings are like day-to-day issues, or like some like regular issues, but we don't like separately allot time for time in the day. I mean, like stand-up meetings for that. So like this is a kind of a issue which we need to address in order to move ahead, because bottlenecks are like important things we need to be considered. So I think it's easy when they conduct a sprint review meeting, focusing on the overall progress. Because if we leave the bottleneck, it may become a serious issue. So I believe that B is a preferable solution.
All right, so Shankar, you have identified why C is wrong. This is correct, but your logic behind B is not correct. So C is not correct because you do not discuss these things in daily stand-up meeting. We are covering this again and again. The agenda for daily stand-up is entirely different, okay? So option C is incorrect. Option B, we do not discuss challenges in sprint review meeting. Sprint review meeting is to present your work to the customer and to seek acceptance and any kind of feedback, like what are the works that you need to redo, what are the work which are according to customer's perception. So sprint review is for getting feedback. Remember, I told you in the last session, when you have 4 options, and let's suppose out of 4, 3 are correct, find the most detailed answer, right? Find the most specific answer, right? So for example, we say employ a Pareto chart. Pareto chart is a tool that, that we use to map the frequency of defects. That is completely irrelevant here. The only answer that is relevant here is investigate cycle times. What is cycle time? Cycle time is a time that you take, like how much time an item is taking from the start till end. That is the cycle time. If there is fluctuation in cycle time, then you analyze what's the reasons behind that. Why there is a fluctuation in cycle time? Because normally cycle times are consistent throughout the process. So whenever there is external disruption, one or couple of tasks, they show excessive delays, and then you can analyze what's wrong with those tasks. So cycle time is the correct answer. All other options are irrelevant. So you can use elimination technique here. So once again, you need to have clear understanding what's the agenda for these meetings. What do we do in sprint planning meeting? What do we do in daily stand-up? What's the, points that we discuss in iteration review meeting? So clarification of agenda is really important in order to answer these questions. Let's review the answer. All right, next question. All right, so different answers. Sao, why you have chosen option B?
Well, for agile teams, it's always best for the teams to be small, rather than large. That's the reason I choose either from 3 to 9 is a sweet spot for agile teams.
Right. Amandeep?
I believe it depends upon project to project. Like it doesn't mention like it's a small project or a large project. So that's why I thought there's no specific guidelines for team sizes. That's why I chose D.
All right. Amanda? You're not audible. Okay. So if you read the book, it is clearly mentioned, as Sao mentioned, like size of the agile team should be smaller. And you might have heard two pizza rule by Jeff Bezos. It says that create teams that are no longer than can be fed by two pizzas. So we call that, two pizza team rule. So the smaller team size, the better the collaboration. And the number is clearly mentioned in the book as well, if you have read the book. It is 3 to 9. Okay.
Are you talking about the book that we're reading it, or is it a
Yes,
different book? Oh, okay.
the same book.
Ammar, I hear like 8 to 12, something like that. That's the reason, like in our class.
No, it's 3 to 9. I can share the reference of the book. Okay.
Okay, yeah, no worries. Yeah, I remember like 8 to 12 somewhere.
And it
like,
is also mentioned in PMI Agile Guide. If you just open it up, search 3 to
oh,
9, you can easily find it. Okay.
okay, Agile Kid, okay.
Right. So the
3 to 9.
suggested size is 3 to 9 members. Next. All right, so you have chosen option C. Shankar, why option C?
Because I remember when you explained it in the class, like you mentioned that the T-shaped members will be having a skill set of they can able to mingle with the HR, and they have some qualities maybe in technical aspects as well. They have qualities of I mean like which can able to collaborate across the team. So I think that is like a specific option which is more relevant.
All right, Rafi, why option C?
For similar reasons, though I was hesitating between C and D, I think that the strength of the T is that they are cross-functional, so that they can really uh, work in different kind of environments because they have a wide set of skills. So I think C was more important than D in this case.
All right, so you'll see in some question this word primary, right? What's the primary differentiating factor? Although D is correct, T-shaped members have diverse skill set, but that's not the primary differentiating factor. So primary differentiating factor is T-shaped individuals are good at cross-functional collaboration. And if you recall, I told you what's the value of having in-depth skill set and what's the value of having breadth of skill set. In-depth or depth of skill set is required to get the work done, and breadth of skill set is required for cross-functional collaboration. So yes, C is correct answer. Read the explanation, then we'll move to next question. All right, next question. All right, so I can see option D, B, DB, and DB, okay? And D is immediately prioritize the defect and B is leave the work item in the testing phase. So this question has very interesting concept and probably it's the basics of Agile or the backlog. So hint is I told you all the work items would go into the backlog, whatever the work item is, in the form of a risk mitigation actions, in the form of a defects resolution action. So if an action item does not go to the backlog, then you cannot do that. It means that does not exist. So whatever the task is, either in the form of defects, risk mitigation actions, or any activity you need to put into the backlog. If it is not there, means that task does not exist. Okay, so I can see option B. Rafi, why option B?
Well, first I want to eliminate option A because it says traditionally the team has moved the work item backward, and then it says, however, to improve the process, a new strategy is proposed. So if we want to eliminate the moving backward, then option A would not be applicable.
That's correct. Good strategy.
Then the option C of creating a new defect card, and it says if work in progress limit allows, and it's doesn't sound too reliable because it depends on the work of progress limit allows, like it's, so I eliminated option C. Then I was left with option B and D. And I did not, option D says to immediately prioritize a defect. There's nothing in the question that says that it absolutely needs to be prioritized.
Correct.
Like maybe it can be resolved later, which is why I picked B.
That's correct. So strategy for eliminating A is correct because it is clearly in contradiction with the statement. So you can eliminate it, and you have eliminated D as well. There is no such information in the question that tells you to prioritize the defect. And you have chosen option B because leave the work item in the testing phase and start working on the defect. See, this is what I'm explaining. Any additional defect is the kind of work that you need to do to resolve that. So that work needs to be put into the backlog in any form, in the form of a defect card or in the form of action item. So any additional item you cannot do without having that in the form of action item because you have a WIP limit, work in progress limit. Let's suppose 100 hours. 100 hours you will be spending to complete the work. Whenever there is a defect, it means there is an additional work that you need to do. Does it make sense? So whenever there is an additional work that you need to add in the backlog while keeping the WIP limit into consideration. If WIP limit allows, add a card to make sure that you're still within the limit and you're solving that. It's not like that you have 100 hours and there are 2 defects of which require 10 hours, then your sprint would be disturbed. It means you will be solving the defects, but you will end up, maybe you won't be completing the important task. So you don't know what's the priority. So you will put this in the form of a card, reprioritize, and then execute. So this is how defects are handled. Remember, I explained it clearly in the class, like any action item should go back to the backlog and it should be reprioritized and then it would be executed. So let's read the explanation. All right, let's move to next question. All right, so I can see D and A. Shankar, why you have chosen option A?
Because it's clearly stated that because of multitasking there is like a delay in the project. So like there is no even distribution of workload. So I remember that once you told like in order to like even the workflow, if you add like one more person, so that work will be like distributed evenly, and so that the people can complete it on time. So like it talks about even work distribution, and uh, what to say, like that will also reduce the multitasking, and I think that is more relevant answer for this question.
All right. Anyone who agrees or disagrees with Shankar?
I
Any?
disagree.
Yeah, go ahead. Why?
So we're not really supposed to increase the number of team members. Or we're supposed to manage with the team members that we have. If we add more team members, the project is going to cost more, and the cost is fixed for agile projects. So we need to find a way to manage the work we have with the people we have. So in my head, this automatically eliminates option A.
All right, so your answer is correct, but the logic that you have provided, that is not aligned, because you can change the team members if there is a need, right? So what I discussed in the class, remember that inverted triangle which you are referring to, that was for one sprint. So in one sprint, you have fixed budget and fixed time, but it doesn't mean you cannot change it, right? You can change it for next sprint. So if you need more resources, you can update your resource requirement. But the problem with option A is that there is no such indication in the question that tells you the problem is with resource constraints. So whenever you need to go to solution, remember, apply this rule. The very first thing that you need to is analyze the problem, find the root cause, like what's wrong with the situation, why they are doing multitasking, what's the reason. So don't assume, based on specific situation, analyze, do the root cause analysis, or find the root cause of the problem and then go for the solution. So from that perspective, option A is incorrect. We cannot do that without analyzing the situation, like what's wrong with that. And yes, option number D is correct, that more specific, more detail is provided, like break down the task to the smaller level and give team member opportunity to complete one task at a time without switching the context, because context switching is that's what we want to avoid. Like if you're working on multiple tasks, so what's happening? You're not focused. That's where comes the concept of work in progress limit, so that team members, they stay focused and they do not do context switching. So option D is correct. Read the explanation, then we'll move to next question. All right. Question number 67. All right, so we can see option C. Shazman, why you have chosen option C?
For me, option A and B are just simply irrelevant. And this all comes down to option C and D. Option D, I guess fishbowl window has nothing to do with elimination of geographical separation challenges. So the only option that remains is option C.
All right. Anyone who could explain what is fishbowl window? All right, so fishbowl window is all the team members in the morning, they join a video or audio or video conferencing in the start of the day, and that call continues throughout the day. So all the team members, they are geographically dispersed wherever they are, but they are continuously connected through a call. They're not talking to each other, they're just working. So whenever somebody needs to talk to somebody, they just unmute and talk spontaneously, right? So just to avoid the challenge of scheduling a meeting, requesting for the time, right? So correct answer is improved collaboration and spontaneous engagement. So spontaneous engagement is the key the benefit that you get by fishbowl window. Let's read the explanation and then we'll move to next question. And also one more thing, what Shazman has mentioned, option D is irrelevant. So that's not the case. If I go here, yes, it eliminates the challenge of geographical separation, right? It could be correct, but it's not very specific or detailed or primary benefit of fishbowl window. The primary benefit is spontaneous engagement. You are on the same call, you are working, whenever you need to talk, you just unmute and you can spontaneously talk, right? So D could be correct, but that's not the primary benefit of fishbowl window. Because if you see, the question asks primary benefit, right? So that's why you need to take option C. Next question. All right, so I can see option C. Rafi, why you have chosen option C?
So retrospective meaning is to to go over what was done, the positive, the negatives, and the stuff. But it's also like a sort of a kind of a conclusion to a phase, the way I picture it. So to have a meeting when there is a problems with, so option C is C, it says when people are struggling. So that's when there's a problem. So like yes, we could have a meeting when there's a problem, when people are struggling and that we're not progressing smoothly, but it would not be called a retrospective meeting.
All right. So you're saying C is not retrospective meeting, but in retrospective, we discuss what could be improved, what went wrong, what went right, what are possible improvements. Retrospective is all about continuous improvement and finding out how we can improve things.
Yes, but option C seems to like retrospective, and the way I picture it is that it's when like when something is complete, when there's a like I don't know, when we reach a certain point, but then option C seems to be just like when there's a problem, we have a retrospective meeting.
All right, so we have one more answer. Yusuf?
Yeah, sorry for being late, and good morning from my side. So it is retrospective. It's not a mandatory meeting. It's more of regularity meeting. So once you need to do it, you do it. If there is no view for that, no need. So it's not. I will not say it's not a stone in the project. It's once when you need it, you call for it. If you exclude the other options from language wise, it's like determining. It's only here, and then the other one in the B, it has been several weeks, so it's not based on time. And upon reaching any other team milestones, again, it's not timed. It's not a timed process. You can do it 4 times per iteration, or you can do it 1 time. And if you don't need it, you may not do it.
Sorry, so why you have chosen option C?
Because here there's a need for it. When the team seems to be struggling on a work completion, is not progressing smoothly. So there was a problem in the work, and there's a lesson learned maybe will be out from it.
So you're saying
And
option C is correct. Whenever team struggles or there's a serious problem, team can reflect on their progress and one lesson learned could be helpful. So option C is correct, right?
Yes.
But
and sometimes people they do it regardless. It's just to be sure that we are doing it right.
But
to congratulate everybody.
Yusuf, question says not aligned with the principle.
Oh. Not aligned? Okay.
Yeah. Okay, right. So let's read the answer. You need to find out something that is not aligned with Agile. So remember, in question when you see word Agile and in a question when you see Scrum, Scrum is a very rigid methodology. Rigid in terms of Scrum ceremonies. Like first you will be having sprint planning meeting, then you having daily stand-up meeting. Daily stand-up meeting should be for 15 minutes. Then you would be having sprint review, then sprint retrospective. So Scrum is rigid, Agile isn't. Agile is flexible, right? So let's read the explanation, then we'll explain. All right, so in Agile, you can have retrospective anytime, whenever you feel the need. So option A says only after the team finishes the iteration review. That's true from Scrum perspective, but not from Agile perspective. In Agile, there's flexibility. Team can have retrospective meetings whenever they're in need of that. So it could be after a release. It could be after the iteration. It could be whenever team is in trouble, or it could be when a certain milestone is achieved. So option A is correct because you need to find out something that is not aligned with Agile principles. So option A is prescriptive in nature. That is not aligned with Agile. So that is correct option. All right, next question. All right, so I can see option B and C. No, only option C. So Yusuf, why option C? You're on mute.
Yeah, it is actually it said here select all applicable options, but for prioritization, invest is one of the techniques. There's another one is smart. They are like leveled. So I think the invest is the independence is the first one, and you need it here because you want to look for dependency as per the question here.
Right.
So the most correct one is C, and if applicable for prioritization, others are still I can go with D with E as well from my side.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
So yes, C is correct. A user story should complies with the invest criteria, like it should be independent, negotiable, valuable, estimable, small, and testable. That's right. I can see option B as well. So why you have chosen option B?
For dependency, for a story that is dependent on external, that have technical dependencies, always important for the dependencies to be resolved first, before the story can, the implementation start, right? Because that is a blocker if the dependency is not resolved. If that makes sense.
Right, correct. So if you see, it says the dependent team has consistently failed to deliver on time,
Yeah.
causing delays in project timeline. So it means you need to remove this dependency. And if you
Right.
recall the definition of definition of ready says you need to check if a user story is ready to be pulled up in the backlog, in iteration backlog. That is called definition of ready. Like a user story has been prioritized, it has been estimated, it has been, sliced, like it has broken down into different tasks. All the, predecessor and successor activities have been listed down. So it is ready to get the work done or to start the work. And I can see option D as well. Definition of done is at the end of user story is completed. That is at the end of sprint. When you complete a sprint, you look after definition of done. So definition of done has nothing to do with with the dependency or how you would be picking up the user story. Acceptance criteria and definition of done is you have completed the user story. So it contains test scenarios. So for example, I say, I need login function. So acceptance criteria is when you complete the user story, you actually perform the login, enter the username, password, and then click login, it should log in. This is called acceptance criteria. That is post implementation. The problem here is pre-implementation, like if you want that user story or not. So correct answer are B and C. First, you need to determine the definition of ready. And in definition of ready, write the criteria, a user story that is dependent on externalities, which are causing excessive delays, that should be removed. So first, you need to redefine your DOR. And second, your user story should follow the invest criteria, like it should be independent from any externalities which are causing persistent delays. So option D and option B and C are correct. D is not correct. Okay. If you have any other perspective or question, you can ask. Rafi, why you have chosen option D?
I think I did not understand the question correctly. So
Okay.
that's why.
Right. Yusuf?
Yeah, for definition of done and readiness, I want very simple discrimination. How can I separate their definitions?
Right, correct. So DOD is a criteria that you need to determine your sprint has been completed after execution. That is DOD, definition of done. DOR is a criteria that you use in the start to pull the user stories in the backlog. Like this user story is ready to be pulled in the backlog, right? So that user story has all the details. It is well explained. It has been estimated. It has been prioritized. So all the criteria have met. Now you can pull this user story in the backlog. So DOR is before execution. DOD is after execution.
Very nice. Very nice. Thank you.
All right. Let's move to next question. Oh, read the explanation, then we'll move to last question. All right, and you'll see some question in the exam in which you have to choose more than one option. So I can see some of you have chosen just one option. So the question where it is written, choose all applicable options or more than one option. So please select more than one option if it is written. Last question. All right, I can see option A, B, and B. Shazman, why you have chosen option B?
Here I've used elimination techniques. Option C and D does not seem relevant to the question because it asks for a completion rate. I was confused between option A and B. Option A says that standardizing for uniform estimations. I did not recall any point reading or during the lecture you mentioned about it. But I did recall something relating to completion rate, so I thought B is the right answer.
All right. So Shankar, why you have chosen option A?
Yes, because it states about the standardization of the story points like across all the teams. Because like if you have particular standard, we can able to like what to say, gauge the performance effectively. And all like it also mentions like that to ensure the uniformity in estimations. So I believe like A is more viable option.
All right. So I can see only 3 answers, right? Jashri?
Yeah, standardizing the story point scale seems to give a since the project manager is looking at comparing the overall progress as well as comparing productivity within the teams. So A seems to be more applicable out of the 4 answers.
All right. So if you recall, in the last question answer session, we had a similar question in which there was a problem of presenting progress to the stakeholders. So what we need to do, like story points, do we need to use R's? And the correct answer was we should look for completion rate rather than story points, because different teams have different story points. Story points are relative in nature and we do not standardize. They vary from team to team because it's relative measure. And the idea of having story points is to give flexibility to the team because it's relative measures, right? So we do not standardize at all, because if we standardize, then we actually lose the point of having story points. Then it means just have R's. R's is the best way of standardization. Okay, you will be using all R's. That's the simplest way. You cannot standardize story points because story points for me, it is different. For somebody else, it is different because it is relative in nature. So for example, when we say 10 story points, it doesn't mean 10 R's. So maybe for me, 10 story points is different. For Lela, 10 story point is different. For Cindy, it is different. For Madan, it's different. That's the flexibility we have. So different teams, based on their experience, they use story points differently. So we do not standardize at all, right? So we should focus on completion rate if we are looking for the progress rather than standardization. And other options, for example, convert into R's, that is not relevant. We don't go for R's because R's is for new teams. That is absolute, right? Teams which are just starting their work, for them, they can use R's. That is absolute estimation, but relative estimation is for the team to give them more flexibility and options. So right answer is focus on the completion rate of features rather than comparing velocities of story points. Yusuf?
Yeah, but we know that from backlocking prioritization for sprint, the first step they do is they do a poker game is that to assign points to stories. You select stories, then you assign points. So people, they vote for that. The aim of this is, and I know from the experience that if you vote today and then you run 2-3 sprints, later maybe you vote for 1 point instead of 5 points for one, because your capacity is increasing, because you train your team. So you know that your capacity with time is built up. So if we have multiple teams working as a group, and you want to standardize the points for stories, this should be as a whole group, they have to agree that this story will take 1 point, this story will take 2 points and 3 points, because the capacity between all the teams are different.
All right. So Yusuf, you're saying capacity of all the team is different. So if all the teams are using similar methods, then there is no point of having multiple teams. So multiple teams, they have their own sprint planning meetings, they have their own daily stand-up meeting, they have their own sprint retrospective, right? So that work is divided into small teams. That's the idea of having different teams. Or maybe they are working on different elements of product. So we cannot merge them together, right? It depends on the volume of the work, size of the work, type of the work. You cannot assign similar story points to all type of work, right? And if there are different functional teams, they have their own background, they have their own experience, so we cannot standardize at all. Yes, within one team, we do. Within one team, we conduct planning poker, and in planning poker, we have the understanding, okay, let's suppose if we are using Fibonacci series, so 1 means this, 2 means this, 3 means. So within one team, it's applicable, as you mentioned, but across team, it isn't. Different teams, they have their own ways of managing work because Agile brings flexibility and options. So
if I'm doing Scrum of the Scrum, like 2-3 teams, I will not use this technique. For whole teams, if I have like 5-6 teams and they are doing, each team have their own Scrum and I'm in the backup, I will not do any what we call it, story points, assignment for different what we call it, features of user stories. I will not do this.
So Yusuf, again, when it is Scrum, I say it is rigid, right? So Scrum of Scrum is a different thing. Agile teams are different things. So you need to differentiate if you are using Agile methodology or specifically Scrum methodology. If it is Scrum, then it is rigid. Like you have to have 15-minute sprint planning, sprint daily stand-up meeting, 2 hours long sprint planning meeting. If iteration length is, let's suppose, 1 week, 4 hours, 8 hours. So if it is Scrum, yes, you do that, but in Agile, you don't do that. You give flexibility to team, and different teams, they have their own relative measures. We cannot standardize them. If we standardize them, then there is no point of having different teams. Then it should be like one team is working as a whole in the project. So the idea of having different teams who are working on different elements of the product according to their own rules, according to their own, experience. So that's why we divide the work into different teams. So to keep the size of the team small, as we discussed earlier, 3 to 9, for collaboration purposes, to make sure that work is, efficiently allocated. So if we club them together, if we standardize their work, then there is no point of having that flexibility. So we lose that, the value of Agile, that is giving flexibility to team members.
Clear. Thank you.
All right. So that's it. Let's read the explanation. All right, there is one comment regarding question number 67. So let's quickly review it and then we will end the session. So Shankar, go ahead. 67 or 65?
65. 65.
65. Okay, go ahead.
So for this one, the answer was C. But there is a slight, what we used to do is like, when we have a issue in the testing phase, what we will do is like, we will not like usually block the testing phase. We used to put it in WIP as well, and we'll create a new defect card, and which will be in WIP until we complete it. So like I felt that like because they mentioned like block the work item, so I felt like it is like not the relevant option. So like we'll only put the phase in block if the person is not available to fix it. So
All right.
like
Got it. So you're saying you create a defect card and take care of WIP limit, but you do not block, right? The only difference is with the blocking. So blocking means what? Blocking means you're not moving that card ahead or backward. Why? Because you want to, highlight that this is the problem. And in the question, if you see, traditionally teams, they used to send the work back to the backlog, but you are not following that. You want to do something different. So that's why we cannot do that. So blocking means keeping the card there. We are not moving it ahead or backward. So blocking does not mean like you are removing it. Blocking means it would stay there until the defect is resolved. Okay.
okay, okay, yeah, thank you.
Ammar,
Got it clear.
Can you show that question 66?
Yes, please, quickly.
Yep. Okay, thank you.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much. You can review these questions later as well. If you're not good at Agile, you're struggling, don't worry. This is just questions are slightly difficult. I understand exam would be slightly easier, but this is just to give you an idea where you stand in terms of Agile. Put more efforts, read the content, review notes, go through the content again, and I hope this would be really helpful to you. So anyone who got 10 out of 10? 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All right, don't worry about marks, right? So if you have learned even one concept from this call, that is beneficial, right? So don't worry about marks. The idea of this is that every question has multiple concepts. Like you must have learned what is fishbowl window, what about capacity, velocity, what's the concept of retrospective, what's the difference between Agile and Scrum. So this would be really helpful to you. Rafi?
So I read the whole textbook, retest textbook, and there was no mention of the fishbowl. And then the fishbowl was in the Agile practice guide. So I'm guessing we should read the whole thing as well, not just the retest textbook.
No, not really. I intentionally added this question just to see if you have read or not. So not really, okay? You could see one or two questions in the exam that you haven't read. So it's not really, you need to read everything. So it's not like that, okay? If you read PMP exam prep book thoroughly, it's okay. Means you will be covering most of the content, 95% of the content. There could be one or two terminologies. And even if you read PMI Agile Guide or PMP exam prep, still there could be one or two things that you have never thought of. So that's not the scale. So stick to one book, but if you find time, you can read Agile Guide, right? Just to strengthen your Agile concepts, because normally we don't use these terminologies, we don't use these methodologies in our day-to-day work, and especially people who are in the industrial sector, in infrastructure work, right? They don't use these methodologies. So for them, they can read Agile Guide. It's just 100 pages, right? It won't take much time. Just go through it, understand the key concepts, and that would be really helpful. But it's not the case like you need to read word for word just to understand each and every terminology. This is just to gauge like if you're reading. So if you see Agile Guide, you say search, you can easily find fishbowl window. That's just to test if you are reading or not, but that's not strictly you need to follow. Stick to one book, read it thoroughly, and that's it. But if you are not feeling confident regarding Agile, go to Agile Guide, read it just to strengthen your concepts.
Thanks.
All right.
Thanks, sir. Thanks, Ammar.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. See you
Thank
on
you.
Monday. Take good care of yourself. Bye.
Thank
Thanks.
you. Good night. Have a good weekend.
Thank you all.